I'm very grateful today. I'm so thankful today to be speaking with Andrew Levitas, the writer and director of Minamata. Andrew, thank you so much for chatting with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I guess I should start off by saying, first of all, I love the film, but second of all, congratulations are in order. When you look at the Oscar fan vote, Minamata came in second, just above No Way Home. And that's really wonderful.
It was actually amazing. This film has, we have had a crazy ride on this film.
Yeah.
MGM had originally dated the film for an Oscar release last year, and then things got crazy with COVID, and our lead actor had some things going on in his life, and it just kept getting pushed and moved, and then we had to take it away from the studio and all this. And it was an amazing thing to see, unexpected. The fan favorite Oscars were for Spider-Man and these like other kinds of things. But what I found that was incredible was, I saw that a bunch of NGOs, right? United Nations environmental programs and European environmental bureaus and groups like this were tweeting and sending out mailers saying, like, we need to see this film. This movie has to get seen. And so, like, I guess thousands or millions, or I don't know what the numbers are, were tweeting and tweeting and tweeting, and people that had seen the film around the world, because we had opened around the world before we opened in the States or in North America. And it was incredible to see all of these other folks go, we need to be heard, and this movie needs to be seen. And they used it not just because it was a fan favorite, but many people that voted were voting because they said, this is an important piece of material that needs to be seen and looked at, and an important subject matter. And it was amazing to see that actually the like folks that aren't tweeting all the time were suddenly tweeting to do this. And of course, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Johnny's fans, because they all found ways to see the film and they really took a big step. But it was amazing to see us, this little indie about something more serious, that's really a crafted film, a piece of cinema, in the midst of all of these like big studio tentpole movies. Because our movie is quite a different kettle of fish. So it was amazing. It was a real treat.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it was really interesting to see that, because then you see like Spider-Man No Way Home, and then it's like Minamata, and you're, wait, for the average person who probably hasn't even heard of the film, like, that's incredible press.
Yeah.
And I did not know that these global rights groups that were tweeting it were sending out mailers, and that's phenomenal.
Yeah, people really, the people. So when we were at Berlin, there was a bunch of NGOs and people that were working on industrial pollution around the world, as well as all of the great photo essayists and photojournalists. They're all massive Eugene Smith fans, and it was important to me that they saw the film early. So many of them I had sent links to. We got the stuff, and actually, when we were having troubles with MGM, they were being quite difficult. Many of those, some of the most meaningful journalists in the world were writing editorials and posting things about how important this film was and the level of quality. I mean, obviously, when a studio buys your movie, they don't normally buy indies. The level of the quality of the film was clear, but just the importance of it and how well it captured that experience and what it was like for them. And it was amazing. And then to see all of that snowball and people going like, we care enough about something that we just need to push. We need to push. We need to push. I was just, it's just remarkable. It wasn't, a bunch of 16-year-old kids, not doing their homework and tweeting like it would have been for Spider-Man or Cinderella or Zack Snyder's movie. This wasn't those people. This was people that really cared. So it was amazing. It was amazing. It was really a fantastic.
That's awesome. That's really special. And as I said, like, the film really is great. It is a wonderful film, very challenging. But I was wondering, for you, as a writer director, what was most daunting about recreating history within the film? I mean, obviously it takes place in 1971. It's in a very specific place and time. What was the biggest challenge for you?
Sure. So, getting the film out there actually ended up being the biggest challenge. But in terms of crafting it, as I built I'm also a fine artist. And so I spend most of my time in a studio making my own work, my sculptures and different things. And so when I take on a film to write and direct, it has to be really specific and it has to be something that I care so deeply about, that just in that caring, you're just constantly thinking about all the different ways to do things and you play it out over time. And so I also am the kind of filmmaker where, I'm interviewing personally every person that steps on my set, whether they're an extra, they're auditioning with me, or they're talking to me. I don't like farm this out, and my crew, it wasn't just, are you the most talented person? Do you understand the vision? Will you be additive here? But also, do you care? Do you believe that we can do something that actually will change people's lives or might have a positive impact in the world? And if you do, then let's all get this like-minded group together, because we're going to give it everything and we're going to love it. And we're going to have something that's it's more than just a film, more than just a piece of cinema. It has all these people's heart into it and we're all pulling in the same direction. So finding those people is more challenging than one would think, right? So they need to be of a certain level, but also, care, right? There was one composer that was the right guy. There was only one.
Wow.
If Reiichi Sakamoto wouldn't have agreed to compose the score for this film, I don't know what I would have done. He's the only person that has the knowledge and the connectivity to this story that could have done it exactly right. My cinematographer, Benoit Delhomme, he's a photographer and he also shoots himself, right? I needed somebody who could shoot because ultimately he had to be Eugene Smith. There had to be a certain camera, which was the Venice that they had it's this big, that we shot on and put photographic lenses on. I needed it to be that way, these types of things along the way. So it was a joy to make those choices. It was difficult to find the partners, but a joy once you had them to make the choices. The difficult thing was, how do I tell a story about a group of Japanese speaking people who are the star of this story? Okay. Use my movie star sort of draw to be our way in and make sure that I can modulate it right, where we start with him, right? And over time we become him. And get that exactly right so that the audience understood all of the visual cues that Gene would have, or Johnny as Gene would provide. But eventually Gene becomes the camera, right? So Johnny's in every scene, or many of them, but in the last third of the film, he says like 3 lines, the camera is speaking for him. And how do you get that exactly right? And then also, how do you go, okay, Gene Smith, this visionary guy that could show you beauty and love and compassion and joy in these dark moments. How do I know how to interpret that part, okay? Because I'm fortunate, I got 1 million frames, he had 1. But how do I and I had all the other tools, music and things, and and I had things that I could do to help express that, but I also had color, right? And so he's a black and white photographer. I have the benefit of color because I can express more with it. But how do I know what colors he was seeing, right? Like I had all of his negatives. I had all of his contact sheets from the Center of Creative Photography in Arizona. So I had stuff to use and I had all huge amounts of information and consultants and people that were helping. But how do I translate what Gene would have seen in color? Because if Gene sees the world the way he expressed to us in his black and white photography, he was also seeing color in a way that was very specific and different than what we would have seen. So figuring out how to translate that and make that leap for ourselves, because Gene's not around to tell us, was quite challenging, to make sure that we thought about it enough to go, this makes sense that he would see it in this way, and here's why, and that was all justified. And then secondarily was making sure I made a film that was for a Japanese audience, right? So a movie made by a Westerner for a Japanese audience that would be most successful there, right? Like we needed to move policy there, but then it had to work globally because it's about industrial pollution everywhere, in Canada, in the US, everywhere. I mean, these are the issues that are happening everywhere. I wanted to speak to people and inspire them, but I also needed to make sure that Japanese audiences flocked to this movie theater, that it changed what was happening on the ground there, because they're denying the existence of these victims at all in Japan still. I mean, it's crazy. So how do you do that? And so part of that was weaving together 2 different cinematic styles, right? As a Western cinematic style that would feel comfortable and exciting and dynamic and and accessible to a Western audience, but also taking cues from Japanese cinema that would allow for a Japanese audience to go, this isn't so foreign to me. I understand what the camera is doing, because it's a very different cinematic language between the two. So that was quite a challenge as well.
That's amazing. Like, I'm just listening to you. This is incredible. Because you've touched on so many different things that I think are just so amazing. I want to talk about. And one of the things I loved about the film so much is the fact that although you could have very easily written this as a Johnny Depp film. This could have been, Johnny walking in, taking a few pictures. He's the hero, but he fades away into the background, not into the background, because he's always present, but like you said, he sort of moves into his eye. And he feels less of a force of nature and more of a participant in what's actually happening. And it's really a delicate balance to walk. Why was that particular angle so important for you as the storyteller?
Sure. Well, two reasons. One, it's true. Okay. And it is what actually happened. And, secondarily, what made Smith and many of the people that followed in his footsteps later so unique is it's a thankless job, right? They're giving themselves. But in order to find the image, it's a total commitment. It's not a pick up your iPhone and snap a photo world that we're living in today. In order to find the image, they need to be so immersed in what's happening in the community, and they need to give their hearts to that. They need to open themselves up and become familiar with the people, with the stories, to really find the singular images that the rest of us, that can express to the rest of us what he will have spent all of this time collecting and understanding to get it. His job is, how do I take all of this and cram it into a couple of frames that the rest of the world can get the story from? There is such a selflessness and a giving in doing that, right? It is such a generous thing to do, and something with no glory, okay? And something that takes real toll on one, that I also wanted to honor that and make sure that the audience understood that and sort of subconsciously got that Gene Smith wasn't the star of his own story. Yeah. So it's not just that Johnny Depp isn't the star of his own story here. Gene Smith is not the star of his own film, of his own life, right? I'm the star of my own life. I guess my kids probably are the star of my life, but nonetheless, I'm the star of my own life. You're the star of your own life, right? We are the centerpiece of our own lives, or the people that we love are, and the things that we care. For Gene Smith and for these types of really meaningful, committed artists, something else. They are not the star of their story. Everything that they have in them is about giving and parking the damage that it's doing to them and trying to move past it. It's such a beautiful thing and such a rare thing that I wanted to make sure that I could express that to the audience and honor it. And also on top of that, getting Johnny to agree to do that was, amazing. And it's a real testament to him and who he is as an artist, because he was willing to do it. Most actors, they don't put things in front of themselves. Yeah. And he did, and God bless him for it.
Yeah, there's a real humility in his performance and in your filmmaking in this particular story. You touched on something there I wanted to come back to, and it's the idea of the relationship with the image. And how do you feel it's changed? Because this film is 1971, and he's talking about the care, crafting every image. And you're right, we live in an iPhone world, but the image, how has our relationship with the image changed to you?
So one of the things that troubles me quite a lot is the distorting of images. Okay. So Gene Smith is funny because in many ways, Gene Smith's like the first guy that he was like the original retoucher in a way. Okay. But he was doing it in a very subtle way and to highlight and to help highlight a story. For example, a monk that is, or in the Spanish story, you have a man, I think it was a man, if I'm remembering, who's dead, and he's lying in the in his coffin, and there nuns and people around are sitting over him. And when you look at the image, you realize that there's no light source that would have brought so much lightness to the face of the dead person. Okay. Mm. And it's very much like a Caravaggio painting or something, where he will have rubbed, the acetate or whatever on top of it to lighten that just a bit and get it perfect to express this idea. So in many ways, he's actually the first retoucher, which brings us today. But the difference is today people are retouching for the wrong reasons, not to express a story or an idea, but in vanity, to distort image, to lie to the public. And that is something that's incredibly troubling to me. It will never happen, but of course, I wish there was a stamp on every image that you see that says, like, this image has not been distorted, has not been changed, has not been whatever, because images are getting repurposed, and there is as a larger global community, we are not trusting our eyes anymore, right? So we see it, we believe it, but then we also go, there's a barrier that's beginning to be put up, because you go, well, I'm sure they did something, this is sort of changed, this is whatever. And it makes it like you feel that you're being manipulated subconsciously. And so you stop having the same emotional connection with it. And thus you stop having the same emotional connection with the subject, and you stop learning. And these things stop becoming nutritious for you and stop feeding us. And it's the same with the written word. I mean, these days, I'm a big advocate and supporter of journalists, because I find that, you're all being attacked in a way that forces your hand to create a salacious headline to get you to read the article. And it's unfortunately the same thing that Bill Nye's character has to do in the film in 1971. It's the beginnings of that, right? He needs to put Raquel Welch in roller skates, a movie star in roller skates, on the cover of Life magazine in order to get people to turn the pages inside and read things that are actually beneficial to them, that are for them, right? Journalists, photojournalists and editorial journalists, like, you guys are there to serve people. You're not there to serve the master of the corporation or big money. You're there to support people, to help people, right? You are a vessel for us, because we don't have time to track it all down. So we need to look to you for truth. And it's such a complex thing that's happened, and it's really troubling. It's really troubling. But for me, I'm the guy that still, and maybe I'm just at that age and I'm a type of person, but I could sit in a museum and I could stare at something for hours on end and get lost into it. But it's such a privilege, it's a privilege to have the time, but it's a privilege to get to connect with images in this way. And I think that it's something that's being stolen from us, frankly. So.
Yeah, I hear you. I see it. We can no longer trust our eyes.
Yeah.
And this film, the story of Eugene and Aileen is very much predicated on that. He's sending photos back. He's like, this is what the truth is.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying there. I really appreciate, honestly, Andrew, this is phenomenal. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you.
Oh,
the film is great. I hope many people get a chance to take it in, and it's a phenomenal story that needs to be told. Like you said, it's far reaching. It's not just this, it's still happening now.
Yeah. It's everywhere. These are everywhere.
Needs to be acknowledged.
And we need to realize, like, we are all in it together. It sounds cliche. It's like it's been said over time, but people have the power, and we all need to recognize that, like, our neighbors are the same as us. People are going through their own struggles. Everyone's struggling. But we can struggle together and make our lives better and protect ourselves by, linking arms. And, I hope the movie inspires people. It's meant to be uplifting and inspiring while dealing with things that are quite complex. So.
I appreciate that. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you
so much.